Okay, thanks for joining the Old College Tribe, the podcast. Today, Peggy and myself are going to be talking about base income years, prior tax year, and the order of operations in which we generally shop for college, and some pretty practical firm advice on how to flip that on its head. Thanks for
Last day was our first grab bag. 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, we got some normalcy back here. Before I guess it sounds like you'll get a break from the audience. We'll get a break from me next week. Well, let's see. So I think before we get into it today, I think we have we found out that something that we talked about, which we're going to dig into today, really resonated with our audience, and that is this thing of base income year, prior tax year. So that is what we're going to dig into because it's really important. And I think one of these things that we take for granted, right? We talk about this stuff every day, so we kind of assume things are common knowledge that are just not common knowledge. So that's what we want to expand upon today. Before we do it, I got a new tune for you, Peggy, and everybody. This is one I've listened to like about roughly a bazillion times over the last few weeks. It's called, so Father John Misty is the band. Father John Misty. Hold on a second. I think I already forgot the name of the song, Peggy.
And I don't know that band. This is awesome.
They are, I was introduced to them just recently. Goodbye, Mr. Blue. Goodbye, Mr. Blue is the name of the song. It's about his cat that died, but it's more than that. It sounds very depressing, I know, but it's like in this, I think I'm very intrigued with the stoicism in general, and one of the practices of stoicism is sometimes almost like picture something horrible happening to people you care about the most, right? But it's actually a real positive to be like, they're here. They're not, and nothing did happen horrible, and try to just realize how amazing that is, right? And another one is, and again, this is where I think it's a little, I've literally already basically cried to the song thinking of Emma to going to college. Because a lot of it is like, this could be the last time. He tells you, well, this could be the last time. And like, again, that's even though it's like sad to think about, I think it helps you be more like enjoying it in the moment of like this, again, she's growing up, she's 11. So some of these things when you've heard me say this before, when she's like crawling all over me, trying to be like, remember that. Right. So.
Yeah. And be present. Yep.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I've
beautiful
got that
song.
written down. I'm going to check it out.
Check it out. Thank you. Okay. So. Let's just kind of start, Peggy. First of all, like you heard me say it, base income year, prior tax year. Let's talk about each of those things, and then we'll kind of go talk about what's actionable. But just explain them to us, please.
Yeah. So the first thing to know, and as you said, Matt, like you don't know it if you don't know it. It's not intuitive. Is that when it comes to the financial aid world, when your child's a senior and you're submitting financial aid forms, you're starting to think about all of this stuff. There's something that President Obama put this in place. So it's been around for a while. Something called prior year. They look at your income. That's like the biggest driver, but they don't look at your current income. They look 2 years back, hence PPY prior year. So for seniors that were listening, that are, parents that are listening right now. So class of 2026, because you've done the forms, hopefully, it was all about 2024. Juniors, it's all about 2025. So if you're a junior parent, you're like, all right, I'm going to start thinking about this. I'm ahead of the game. It's great that you're thinking about it. I'm not beating you up, but the tax year that matters is already in the rearview mirror. So you see where I'm going here for sophomores. If you have a sophomore right now, class of 2028, it is all about now. And we're in March. We're already in March. So that is like huge for you to understand so that you don't increase your income. You can start strategizing. The more you're in the know, the better you can be in the driver's seat about it. So that's what prior year is. You want to chime in, and then I'll talk about base year?
Yeah, I just think, again, just to double down on a couple of those, because again, most people are surprised when they hear this, right? Of like, well, wait a minute, my current income is not really relevant when it comes to being eligible for my first year of financial aid. And the short answer to that question is yes, right? Again, 2,027 families that might be like, I'm all over this, I'm digging in right now. The die has already been cast, right? Like that is in the rear view. Whatever happened in 25 happened in 25, and barring, making some adjustments via, I don't know, corrections on our tax returns or something, we probably can't walk anything back, right? And again, even for class of 2027s that are like, okay, or sorry, 28s, I'm a sophomore, right? Like, I'm going to get way ahead of this. You're already in it. The clock has already started running here. Now, it's probably not too late to make some adjustments here, but again, to your point, you see where I'm going. Freshmen, those families that have a freshman in high school are probably thinking, I got another couple of years before I got to dig in. You have 9 months before, again, the meter starts running to establish your eligibility for financial aid for your first year, your base income year, which is the most important, right? That kind of sets the foundation for all 4 years. It doesn't mean things can't change for better, for worse, but we are laser focused on maximizing opportunities for the base income year because the colleges are going to be budgeting for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of sets the foundation. It sets the stage. It's reassessed every year for need-based aid, but it does. It sets the stage for sure. So that's the concept of base year. That's what we call that first year.
Okay. Now, and maybe you can do this however you want, whether you pick off each class one by one, or given that, right? Given what we just learned here, and we always know if I'm class 2027, they're looking at 25 tax returns and so on and so forth. What are some of the things that we can do, right? Maybe retroactively or currently or proactively, and maybe there's other three that we should kind of pick off and talk through. But given that that's the deal, what can we do? What can we control?
Yeah. So if you're a senior parent, everything's been submitted. I'll plant the seed, and we've talked about this in depth on the podcast. So definitely check out past episodes. But you can't really go back and do anything to your 2024 return. Obviously, if you made an error and you need to amend it, you should do that regardless of financial aid. And if that's going to benefit you, that will help, right? That's a bit of a long process, and you're going to have to communicate with the college if you're in that boat. But the key thing for you is appeal, appeal, appeal. Now, if things are different, even if they're not different, you might have some good grounds to appeal and change a financial aid award that your child has been given, unless there are reasons to amend. That's kind of the sweet spot for seniors. And again, we did a whole episode on the merit-based appeals and a whole episode on need-based. So definitely check those out in Spotify or wherever you're watching this. If you're a junior, appealing is always on the table for all classes. But if you're a junior, as you just said, Matt, 2025 is in the rear view mirror. The key thing to reduce income and this is good for sophomores, not as much for juniors, is you can make, and this gets a little confusing, so I'm going to explain it. You can make tax deductible automatic contributions to a 401k or a 403b directly through your employer. A lot of you are probably, if you're fortunate enough to be able to part with that money, you're probably already doing that. And that can be huge to reduce your income and your adjusted gross income at many schools in this country, except for about 250. If you reduce that, if you're able to, I know it seems like a lot, but if you're able to max that out, which could be 30,000 plus, depending on your age, you've just now lowered your income massively, which literally at certain schools could mean 4 or 5 figures of need-based aid. So that's huge for sophomore families because it's March. You could start plugging that in. And if you can afford it, one, you are saving for retirement. So that's a win. And two, you could get money from colleges. Now, I will say, full disclosure, that a bunch of schools still look at that, about 250, but these tend to be the schools that are the most popular, right? That everybody's heard of, and they mostly are private. So they're going to ask you if you did that, and they're going to add it back in. But schools that only require the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, they don't add that back in. So that's a huge thing. Now, not to be confusing, I want to be fully transparent that I was very clear. It's 401k and 403b contributions through your employer, not tax deductible IRA contributions. If you're a business owner, you'll understand these terms. If you have a SEP or a simple plan, those do not fall in this bucket. because they show up on your 1040. The 401ks and 403bs do not. They show up on your W-2 in box 12. Nowhere does that show up on your tax return. So when they did the FAFSA Simplification Act, this was something that they put in there. So it's a really nice, I know I'm probably getting too far in the weeds, right, Matt? It's a really nice planning opportunity for sophomore families, freshmen. I mean, put this in your mind and start thinking about it as a way to reduce your income, which will help you with many colleges in the country.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, again, if we can do it, there's just a lot of upside. We're paying less taxes. We're planning and saving for retirement, right? And then maybe we have this awesome kind of third bonus of paying less for college, right? It's just, that's how the I think it's important though to hit on each of these details, because for most families, like, yes, sometimes there's these kind of like drastic recommendations that we make that's going to save them all this money. But that's not most families, right? Those are, it's all about these kind of like micro decisions along every part of this process of understanding how this whole thing works. And if you add up all these different, again, I don't even know if that's a word. I think I might have just made it up, but like, then we're really maximizing our odds of having this great end result. So this is just a good example of one, because to your point, Peggy, it's like, I think a lot of people hear like, well, my income is what it is. We're both two earners, and like whatever shows up on my adjusted gross income, that's the deal. Maybe, right? Maybe, but there's these things like, again, to your point, but can we max out our 401k? If we are self-employed, oftentimes that means there could be some more flexibility there, right? Can we keep, we're probably doing this anyways, but can we keep more money in the business during certain times, right? Or based on, again, where this base income year shows up. So again, we want to take advantage of that flexibility if we're a business owner. Maybe we're somebody that gets paid a commission, right? We're in sales, or we are eligible for bonuses, right? Commissions and bonuses. Sometimes, again, this is not everybody, but sometimes you have an element of control around the timing, right? So maybe, again, you can ask your employer, hey, you know what? Can I get actually my bonus after January 1st in my base income year to put myself in and a lot of times employers are like, beautiful. We'd love to drag our feet before we pay you. Again, is that everybody? Of course not. But these are the types of things that we want to be looking at. And to the extent that we can control, just maximize the situation that we're going to present to these colleges, specifically in our base income year, right? So that's why it really is important.
Yeah. I'll bring up just another
Mhm.
piece of this, and this is super relevant for juniors. You're in your 2025 is what it is. If you're steady Eddie W-2, you're not going to amend your return to lower your AGI. But another part of this is assets, your non-retirement assets. So you have time to spend money. Now, I'm not saying go take trips to Europe and blow all the money that you potentially would use to pay for your share of college. But what I'm saying is, if you've been planning, you have a clunker on the driveway and you've got to replace that car, do it before you're submitting financial aid forms if you're spending your non-retirement money, which is what you would be spending on a new car. If you've been saving a bunch of money to redo your counters in your kitchen and your cabinets, like, do that, because then when you submit these forms in the fall, you're not going to be saying, well, I have 200,000. You're going to be saying I have much less because I spent a bunch on my kitchen. If you're going to make these expenses, do them. Some people have debt on their credit card, right? And they're paying high interest rates. If you've got a chunk of money you're sitting on, we could have a conversation as to why you have all that debt, but pay off some of that credit card. So assets are the other bucket. And all this should be analyzed. Like, Matt and I obviously are not giving individual advice on our podcast, because we have to know your family. You have to know tax ramifications. There's a lot of moving pieces to any of these decisions. Like I always say, don't make them in a silo. Don't make them in a financial aid silo at all. But we're trying to plant seeds here of different things you can do based on where your child is in high school, basically, what year.
Great point, right? And that's something else. Again, I'm really glad you mentioned it, because we were just obviously focused on kind of the income component, which I think most people have less flexibility with. There might be some more options to get smart with, strategic with, when it comes to savings, investments, et cetera, specifically non-retirement. savings and investments, etc. And then just in the same breath, because we get the question all the time, right, Peggy? Should I buy a boat? Should I go on vacation? I heard 529. If I have a 529, I'm not going to get any financial aid. Now, none of that is true, right? That's never what we recommend. But to your point, if you were been dying to redo your kitchen, it's just well, maybe this is the extra nudge you needed, right? Type of deal. Now, especially if we're taking money out of the market, we want to look at, well, what type of capital gains am I getting,
Yeah.
right? Is this going to increase my adjusted gross income, which could backfire as a potential strategy here? So we do have to, like Peggy said it, right? Like these are all talk to somebody on our team about this if you're even thinking about doing anything, because these are all the questions that we're going to be asking to say, well, does it make sense to pull the trigger here? Again, there's not a universal, everyone should do this, everyone should not do this. I teased it earlier where I said sometimes where we recommend more drastic strategies, because there are places, and I think we've talked about on the podcast, there are places you can quote unquote hide money from the financial aid calculation, or shelter is usually the terminology but if you're if you're talking to somebody and they're very aggressive around that recommendation, and maybe you talk to some other friends in your community that they're recommending you shelter all your money, you pull money out of home equity, and buy this financial product, whatever, buy this insurance product, run in the other direction. But again, for some people, if you check all the right boxes, it does make sense to do something, more creative, more drastic, whatever the appropriate word is there, right? But to your point, Peggy, if you have some non-retirement savings, investments, etc., it probably makes sense to talk to somebody to be like, am I in the optimal situation? Should I consider doing anything different than steady state? Right.
Yeah. And then you have to be careful. I mean, the financial planner in me, you want to have money. Most people are going to have to pay the college something, and you don't want to be going after high interest rate loans because you spent out all your money and you're not ahead of the game, right? So again, you got talk to somebody on our team. If any of this is landing, get expert advice, and get expert advice from somebody who's aligned with you as far as how they're making the money to give you the advice. If it's a one size fits all, like you said, Matt, you got to run. That's true for asset management. That's true for everything, because there just aren't one size fits all solutions for most things.
100%. Okay, so this is very much related to our conversation here around, okay, this base income year, prior tax year deal. I got to figure out, should I do anything proactively, reactively, whatever might be the case. And obviously this all comes down to also my SAI, right? So if you haven't already, make sure you set up a free account with us, mycap.collegeaidpro.com, and you put in your income and assets, and we're going to tell you the deal. And obviously you can play with those numbers and hypotheticals. That's really helpful too. Well, what if I did this? What if I did this? And maybe I have all these assets, but it's not worth doing anything because my income's too high. I'm not, so again, that's a really functional, platform, right? Where they can help inform your decisions. I would still talk to somebody, but at a minimum, use the software.
Yeah, that's the starting point before you chat with somebody. Get in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Now, and the reason why this is relevant is, well, because this is a time of year where it's spring break. People might be visiting some colleges, right? Making some decisions on colleges, and something that we are, all of us, kind of swimming upstream, going against the tide here when it comes to this college buying process. And this is one of the superpowers of the colleges, I might say, or our system here in the United States, where, think about it, for any other major investment that we make, and I think the home, if we're fortunate enough to try to buy a home someday or buy a home, we've all been through this process where first we have a budget, and usually we have guardrails because the bank says, this is your budget, right? Based on your income, based on your resources. We're not giving you a loan for more than X amount. You got to go shop for a home that's, $400,000 or less, or whatever the number is, right? And then we go shop, and then we buy our home. And again, the system kind of has guardrails where it's a little bit hard to get ourselves in too much trouble. Just the opposite here at college, right? First, it's go shop. Go send your kids to these amazing campuses and let them go fall in love with these schools that may or may not be within your budget, right? Then we're going to buy, right? So we're going to shop, and then we're going to buy, and then we're going to kind of budget, i.e. figure out how we're going to pay for it, right? We'll figure it out. Another superpower that
Yeah.
colleges have that so many families say. So intuitively you hear this, but it's easier said than done, guys, because most families follow the herd here, right? And shop for colleges the opposite way. But and obviously if it's not very clear, we are huge proponents that no, do not follow the way of the herd here. Don't do it the way the colleges want you to do it. Do it our way. But Peggy, do you have any commentary there? And I know
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. I mean, you said it very well. I love it's budget, shop, buy, not shop, buy, budget. Like that's just not it's just not the way to do it, and it causes stress, obviously financial stress, but stress with your kids, stress between spouses. It's just not a win-win in any way. So, college visits, you might be sitting there going, "Well, okay, thanks a lot, guys. We were planning on hitting some campuses." Depending on the age of your child, it's not a problem. It actually, you should be hitting campuses. If you have a younger child and I always say, like, you're in vacation in the Pacific, I mean, in the Northeast or where I grew up in Jersey, you can throw a rock and hit 3 colleges. Just go walk through some colleges. Doesn't need to be a formal tour. You're not spending hours. Just get your child kind of used to campuses and like, oh, I really love that, mom. I don't like this school. You'll start to listen and hear what they like and don't like. But my advice is don't get emotionally tied to schools when you literally have no idea what it's going to cost. And don't think when you go on a tour, if you are talking to sitting in an admissions presentation or a financial aid presentation, and they tell you the average family pays this, and you hear it and go, wow, that's a lot less than what they cost. That's going to be me. Don't do that. They're not lying, but they're not finishing sentences and saying, you have to be this to fall into this bucket because you very well could not be that profile of income, or maybe you are with income, but not with your assets. They're very slick marketing machines, these colleges. They're good at what they do. And these popular schools already have you, in my opinion, because you're thinking brand and you're thinking these are the only good schools out there. So they halfway have you to the buying decision already. And then they layer it on with some of these things that they'll share on tours. So just got to be really careful. And if you are going to do a major tour and you are going to get emotionally tied to schools, which I don't think you should ever do, but that's easier for me to say, it's my personality. But do what I'll call fluff tours. But as Matt said, do your budget, understand how things work by going into our software before you do start getting into a serious tour. And if your kids come home and go, I love XYZ school, fine, listen to them, but understand and plug that school in, and then start setting expectations for your child. All right, Johnny, well, that seems like a great school. That could probably be more expensive for our family. So let's start talking about that. And you start having the conversations.
yeah, the and it's funny because that has historically always been kind of my guidance, very similar. And like, hey, look at just start popping onto some of these campuses. Obviously, again, up here in the Northeast, it's very easy. They're everywhere, right? But the go see a small school, go see a big school, go see an urban campus, go see a suburban campus, when it makes sense. And you'll just start to formulate some opinions. But Peggy, and I was just saying this before we went live here today, we just had a team offsite down in Charleston. We toured the College of Charleston. I was walking around that place going, I would overpay for this. And I could see a lot of kids just being like, touring that for the first time, being like, I am going here, right? It's stunningly beautiful. It's right in the middle of the city. It has all this history. It just looks like an amazing place to go to school. And I know, again, historically, they're not necessarily known for their generosity or affordability. Now, again, that's not the case for everybody, but that's not one that. So again, I gave you a lot of actually like compassion and empathy for families of being like, wow, I preach to say do it this way, but it would be pretty stinking hard in real life when you're there getting this. To your point, they are master marketers. And this thing is
Yeah.
one big advertisement for the experience.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, I appreciate the challenge. Let's put it that way. It makes me appreciate the challenge, but that's why we have to work hard to try to the extent that it's possible, have the practical be right there with the emotional. right?
Yeah, it's just something you gotta tee up with your child from the beginning, because then I did this, as I've said many times, as you move through the process, trust me, you will set that expectation with your child, and when it gets toward the end, you'll be able to have that conversation, and you've seen it, and I've seen it way too many times where a parent all of a sudden is having that conversation second semester, senior year, and it's really rough. It can be really, really hard on the relationship, and the decisions that have to be made could be bad. A no to the school or a yes to the school, and parents going in and the student into way too much debt. So,
Yeah.
it's frustrating for me being in this field for so long. It's avoidable. And
Right.
that's what we're talking about today. And I know budget, a lot of people hear that word and they cringe. Just, it's yucky and it's not their sweet spot, and they know it might tell them things that they really don't want to hear and lifestyle changes, but it if you put it off till your kid's starting senior year and then you're going, now I have to do this, you've really, like what we've talked about today, you've really missed a lot of opportunities to spend way less money. So I'm really challenging people, when you hear that budget word, just smile and go, Peg said to smile. If you smile, that will change your mindset a little bit.
Yeah, and look at but to your point, and I think it is important because it's just like it's one of these painful things. I mean, you've heard me say this, where sometimes it feels like I know people when they think about talking to us or they think about digging in on this, and they be, I know I should do it. It sounds like a painful exercise, right? I've compared it to the dentist before. I know I should go to I know I should go to the dentist, but I don't fucking want to, right? But like but you should. You have to. And again, and I think sometimes we feel like that, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that. Okay. Because guess what? I don't care what type of student your kid is. We'll show them schools where they're getting a scholarship. Guaranteed. Right.
Yeah.
That would love to have them. Okay. And I like JP Schmitz. He's a colleague of ours. He's one of these rare breeds like him and Dan Vizig, where they're experts on the admissions and financial aid side. Right. And so they have this unique perspective. I love his process, but he creates these guardrails for families, and families can do it themselves, right? Easier said than done. I think it's sometimes easier to hear from a third party for your, teenage kid. But he says, look, we're gonna find out what your budget is. It might be zero, guys, right? Right. But we're gonna find out where your budget is. Then we're gonna find out where it kind of makes sense to start the shopping process for your kid. And then we're gonna find 25 schools that fit within the budget, right? 25 schools.
And are good academic. Like if you want to be a social worker, like my daughter, they have a social work program, so you're
Exactly.
kind of hitting both of those.
And then get out of the way, parents, right? And then get out of the way. And then it gives the students some agency. It's not the parents. They're not coming at it from this place of, we can only afford this much. And then and you don't know how expensive college is and life is. And, so I think the tone of it doesn't have to be like, hey, you're being the bad guy here, right? And you're feeling all this guilt and shame where like, oh my God, I didn't save $300,000 on a 529, right? Very few people have the resource, are able to do that, right? So again, I think the spirit of it can be one that's optimistic, right? And it's like, yeah, is every school going to be affordable in their budget? No, but guess what? Dozens are going to be, and we'll help you. We'll help you figure out where it might make sense to start. So
Yeah. And that also gives your child agency, right? Then you can sit back as a parent and say, okay, I know from a financial and academic fit, these are good for my child. And then
right.
let them look and go, it could be dumb stuff. I love the weather. I love this program. I love this. But then they have some independence to look at it, but they're not finding what we call Maseratis because you just give them, back in the day, my kids, the Fisk book, because there was not a lot of internet going on. And then they find stuff that's completely unaffordable. Do your stuff first. There's so many schools in this country, to Matt's point. It could be here's like 25, 30 schools. Go look at them. See what you think. And
Yep.
then that gives them agency and it gives them some life skills to just start doing some research about it.
100%. I think that's important stuff. And again, just I think like always, Peggy, it would just be like just start, dig in, roll your sleeves up. It's not necessarily a nasty process. It's not going to the dentist, right? We're trying to make good decisions for our kids. A ton of this is fun, even though it's scary and intimidating. and all
Yeah,
that.
it's just part of the price. It's so funny you say that because like budgeting is like my weird my husband's like, you really like doing this stuff, and I'm like,
You
I
love
do.
it, but
That's why I did it for a living. I'm like,
you're a sicko, Peggy. You know what I
I am.
mean?
I'm a sicko. So when you say the dentist, I'm like, "Oh, I hate going to the dentist, but this
Yeah,
this is
right.
great." So, but and it doesn't have to be a 3-page spreadsheet. I mean, don't tell yourself a story. Just start. And if
Right.
you start, you're way better off than if you don't start at all. And just start having the conversations if you're married or if you're divorced and you speak with your ex, like just start talking about it. And then that's just a huge step, and pat yourself on the back. Don't tell yourself this is going to be hell on earth, because it doesn't need to be like that.
Action absorbs anxiety, right? Just get
Yeah.
started.
And just put a smile on your face when you say the word budget.
There you go, Peggy. Yes, I'm gonna try that. All right. Well, thank you, dear. We will see you, I guess, in
Yeah, and join us next week. I'll be talking to Mark Hernandez. Got a super cool background, was a high school teacher for 25 years, Stanford grad, and he's dealt with these high school kids. He's been in, a Stanford, obviously, environment. And he's just a really kind of kooky, fun guy that has a social media presence. So it's going to be a great conversation, great insights. You've got high school kids. He dealt with them for 25 years in the Bay Area. So it's just going to be a really fun conversation. So definitely be waiting for that one next week.
guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Old College Try, the podcast. I was joined today by co-host Peggy Keogh. Today's episode was produced and edited by Eileen Campbell. If you haven't done so already, please like us, please follow us, please share us with any friends and family, and make sure you tune in next week. Thank you.